We definitely know that you love your family and you love the atmosphere you brought into Jeffersonville and that family atmosphere. And our next person is a junior who's a very family-oriented person, and she has our next question.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. I know that you talk a lot about your personal life at Jeff and growing up here, but one thing we didn't know about you is that you battled cancer. So I was wondering if you could just walk us through your journey.
Sure. Long story. I was in really good health, but in May the 31st, 2006, I'd gone to the doctor previously, the week before, and the doctor called me up, and it was about 3 o'clock on, I think, a Wednesday afternoon, and wanted to give me my results of a test they had run, biopsy. And it's one of those phone calls you never forget. It's just, Mike, I'm sorry, but you've got cancer. I was in extremely good health. I had 3 young kids, 6, 8, and 10. And I remember I was at Jerry's restaurant working, and I walked outside as I'm getting the phone call, and my knees hit the parking lot. And, you know, you're all going to have moments in your life that you're going to look back on, and something's going to change. But, you know, it's doom and gloom. For the next several days, I go in to see the doctor, my family doctor. I take my wife along with me, and you know, he tells us what's happened, the lymph nodes in your neck, you know, cancer's gotten in here and it's worked its way around, and you know, it's wrapping around your neck, stage 3. So our question was, you know, well, you know, what are my chances of surviving? And Dr. Burke said, you've got a 50-50 chance of making it a year. I'm trying to hold it together. My wife Vicki just starts screaming. We're in this little doctor's office, and I'm sure everybody out in the lobby thought somebody was getting a tooth removed or something, but I'm like, okay, you know, what's the next step? So he sends us to a chemotherapy doctor, oncologist over in Louisville, Dr. Ham. Don't ever go see Dr. Ham. Bad news. Go in there, we ask him the same question. You know, hey, what do you think my chances are? And he's like, well, what did your family doctor say? And I said, well, he said I had a 50-50 shot. He said, your family doctor's way too optimistic. Well, my wife starts screaming again. And, you know, what do you think? And he said, I think you got about a 15% chance of making it a year. And so go from there, go see the radiologist doctor. Like a week later, Dr. Albright. I'm forever indebted to Dr. Albright. He used to practice over here on Spring Street across from the hospital. But I asked him, you know, I said, what would you do if it were you? And I said, I got 3 young kids, 6, 8, and 10. Tell me what you would do. And he said, let me think about it. A couple of days go by, he calls me on a Friday evening. And he says, you know, you put me on a heck of a spot here, because the doctors around here like people to stay around here. And he says, but you know, you've asked me what I would do. If I were you, I'd get down to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. Well, how do I do that? Well, he helped get me an appointment, and spent pretty much all of July, August, September down in MD Anderson. Came back a couple of times, and at this time I'm also running for county commissioner. I just declared I was running earlier that year. But went through the chemo and the radiation, lost a ton of weight, never told my kids. They knew I had cancer, but they didn't know how serious it was. But I thought, you know, I'm running for office. I'm not going to hide from this. People are going to know. I've lost my hair. I've lost 40 pounds. The county 4-H fair is going on. People expect to see somebody who's running for office out and about. Well, my campaign slogan's always been, I'm for Mike Moore. So we got my kids. We just told them, look, Dad's getting some treatment. I'm going to lose my hair. But that means it's working. It's okay. It means that the medicine's working. So my kids, I had them on the back of my head with a blue Sharpie, right, real big, I'm for Mike Moore. I thought, everybody's going to look at me. I might as well try and get a few votes while I'm doing this. So I walked through the county 4-H fair, and you know, it was a little embarrassing, but it also made it a little fun. And it made it for my kids, who probably otherwise would have seen, you know, their dad getting pitied. It brought a little laughter. So my son at the time was 6, and I was coaching his Little League team, and I'd always told him, I pitched in Little League, Garen pitched in Little League. He always wanted to throw the curveball, and I'd always said, Garen, you can't throw a curveball until you can shave. You know, you're not going to do that. Well, that summer, took him out in the yard, and you know, hearing the news, you're not going to be around. You change a little bit. You start to think, my kids need me. And I taught Garen how to throw a curveball. And you know, he was, Dad, why are you doing this? You know, you told me I couldn't throw a curve until I shaved. Well, I want to make sure I don't forget someday. So I taught Garen how to throw a curveball when he just turned 7 that summer. But went through everything, chemo, radiation. I wear a bracelet here. That's my reminder. I wear that all the time, look down to it from time to time. But that's my reminder of what I went through. And came back on October the 6th, 2006. Had a feeding tube in me. I was 45 pounds lighter. Only way I could get food in me was pouring it through a funnel in my stomach. But I was smiling. And I knew I couldn't leave my kids. And you know, you go through something like that, it wakes you up. You can forget all the little petty things that have happened in the past. And believe me, I've had more than my share of people throwing mud on me. I don't give a damn. You know, I bring it on. You know, I believe by this saying, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And I've cherished every day I've had since then, and made some changes in my life. I've never been happier. I was divorced for a number of years. I've met a new woman, Jamie. We married, it'll be in June, it'll be 2 years. But love of my life. I've got an incredible relationship with my children. And it was actually at Gilt Edge Church. They had me, it was before I was the mayor, but it was in 2011. They had asked me to come tell my story of how God had been in my life and what God meant to me. And I brought my wife and my 3 kids. My 3 kids to that day didn't know what Dad went through, didn't know how serious stage 3 cancer was. We didn't tell them. But I went up there on the altar and started talking about what I just shared with you all. And it was at that time that my at that point, my kids were, 5 years later, they would have been 11, 13, and 15, and they hear their dad talking about how close death was. They didn't know that. But looked out there and I'm telling my story to the congregation. My children are just bawling their eyes out. They didn't know. And but something's going to happen in all of your all's lives. It may not be as dramatic as that. Something's going to wake you up. Had it not been for this community and my family and friends and my church and Angie Maxwell, who was my teacher in jazzercise, who kept me exercising and kept my mind busy, something will change you. Do not dwell on the negative. There's negative everywhere you go. My New Year's resolution every year, stay away from negative people. Life's too short. We've all got something to be thankful for. There's always something more. Don't be that person that's not happy unless you have everything. Appreciate what you got. That's my story, and I just celebrated 15 years being cancer-free last October. So life's pretty good.
Thank you for sharing that with us. This question's a lot more lighthearted. It has to do with schools and snow. So what do you have to do to prepare for inclement weather? And I know that the school district has to decide whether or not we go to school, but what do you have to do for the city?
Well, I've got an incredible team. Kevin Moreland is our street commissioner. Jeremy Neff is the supervisor. Paul McGee and Clark Miles run sanitation, but when a snow event is coming in, they're all hands on board. And one of the things you need to remember, because we had an event about a week ago, the same crews that are cleaning the streets are also picking up the trash. So the snow event that hit about a week ago came in, the snow started around 10 a.m. The crews get started at 6:30, picking up trash. So they're hustling around, trying to get their, all of the trash throughout the city picked up. And then it basically overtime is mandatory. We hit all of our major thoroughfares first: 10th Street, Hamburg Pike, Holman's Lane, Allison Lane, Utica Pike. Those are all the primary streets they get to first. There's a couple of subdivisions in the city, Crystal Springs, that I think that's where you live, isn't it? Yeah. There's a hill that goes up there, pretty steep. It was an old county road, but it's pretty steep. That's one of our main streets we hit first. But the crews are out there. We're sitting on, I think, 500 ton of salt. So not anybody can just get in one of these trucks and go out and throw salt. You've got to have a CDL license, which is very hard to attain. And we've got a number of CDL licensed drivers that do this. I think we've got 10 snow trucks in the city. And if I'm not mistaken, there's somewhere in the ballpark of about 275 miles in the city. So 10 trucks, and you're driving relatively slow while you may have the blade down on the front and you're throwing snow in the back. But we hit our primary roads first, and like the Crystal Springs Hill, that's one of the first. But we get all of those covered first, and then we get into the subdivisions, usually the second day, not generally the first day. But 275 miles of road, but we're constantly, if we know an event is coming, we've had several of these where we've gotten a group of us together, usually my police chief, my city engineer, who's involved because snow when it drains is going to cause issues with the drains. So you've got your city engineer there, your police chief, your fire chief, your sanitation director, your street commissioner, myself, my city attorney, and usually my parks department, Paul Northam, is there because he's got some trucks also that can help. But we're listening to, generally a National Weather Service will have updates. So, you know, they may say next update's coming at 2:15. Well, we're all in a room listening to it, and we're making plans, making strategies. Generally, we will work the crews, you know, well past their shutting down time, and they're in overtime. But you can't have somebody driving a truck 24 hours. So we generally break the teams up into 2 different teams, and we'll, you know, tell one team, go home, get some sleep, come back in 6 hours, 7 hours, and you just alternate back and forth. But a lot of planning, but a very solid crew. When I was a kid, Clarksville was known to have the best street department around. Donnie Hansford ran the Clarksville Street Department and did an incredible job. And I've actually, when I came in, reached out and talked to Donnie. I wanted to know, okay, educate me. And, you know, I had my street commissioner there too. You know, tell us what works, tell us what doesn't work. And, you know, doing it for 10 years now, but we've got an incredible crew. And, you know, it kind of makes you proud. You walk around, you go into Kroger, people are thanking you. Thank you so much for the, you know, the crews out here clearing our streets. People appreciate it. Something you may take for granted, you don't pay a whole lot of attention to until the event happens. But it's regularly, we hear, you know, your streets are so much better over here than they are in Louisville, or so much better here than they are on the interstate. A lot of people in our community, probably some of the children that, you know, the department heads that I have work for the city, they're amongst you all here at Jeff High, but just a bunch of good people.
Our next question regards something everyone in this room, I'm sure, enjoys, which is Jeff sports, and that question comes from Julia Hoyer.
What's wrong with our basketball team?
That's what we want to know.
Hey Mike, it's good to have you back. So we've noticed that you attend a lot of the sporting events here at Jeff, and for most Red Devils fans, the biggest attraction is Jeffersonville basketball. So my question is, as a child and as a student here, what were some of your favorite memories, and why do you think Jeff basketball continues to be so popular today?
Well, I think sports in general are a great outlet. You know, most of us, you know, have careers. We come home, we need something. I know I was glued to the TV this past weekend watching all the football games. But you know, I was born in '64, so my first 7 years were watching Jeff High basketball down at the old field house. And I think I may have shared with you before, Mike Flynn, who was Indiana Mr. Basketball in 1971, he was my hero. And I got to go to, you know, all the away games. My dad drove the fan bus. And it's just, Jeff High sports have always been a huge part of my life. Tony Winburn was another. There's a number. When I had Jerry's Restaurant, I had a wall, like a wall of fame. And they were players that were very special to me that came through Jeff High. And when I became mayor, we had this beautiful Vissing Park built. We just completed it when I came in, and had 2 basketball courts down there. And I'm like, I want to rename these, or I want to name these basketball courts. I think it's very important that these may be names you all have never heard of. I want to make sure the history that we've got here at Jeff, which is so proud. I love seeing your Letterman jacket there. I want to make sure that the generation that never got to see the Mike Flynn's or the Tony Winburns or the Wayne Walls or Jeff Fry's, Tommy Bakers, I want to make sure, you know, you all know what used to be. So on the 2 basketball courts, one of them at center court, you've got Mike Flynn court, and on the other one you got Tony Winburn court. It's just, I think we all need outlets. I was never good enough to play. I used to think I was, but I wasn't. I loved playing intramural ball. I was the little kid at Oak Park playing basketball out in my backyard, you know, way past dark. I had flashlights on the back corners of the concrete pad my dad had built, lining up to the basketball goal in the backyard so I could sit out there and shoot. But I just, you know, whether it's basketball or football, we had a pretty solid program the last it goes back a few years, but the girls softball team. I got to come out and throw the first pitch last season with that, and that was fun. I was a tennis player. So everything at Jeff that is extracurricular, I'm very supportive of. You've got an incredible chess team here too. I met the chess coach who's going around and introducing this into the elementary schools. I love that. I saw a sign up there. I think it said starting in March or April, the chess club. But the theater department here, the band that's here, everybody needs something. You know, I'd love for everybody to be A, B students. I was a solid C. So you need something. My girls played volleyball here. My son played basketball. You all have this TV program that I'm sure you spend a lot of time after school doing. Everybody needs something, but the city, I think we all need something too. And I know Jerry's Restaurant, we were 24 hours, 7 days a week. And in the heyday of the 70s, when Jeff High basketball was dominant throughout the state, if Jeff High basketball was going well, our restaurant was going well because we were the place people came. And you go by Hoopsters, which is up here on 10th Street. They've always got something Jeff High basketball related or football. But I think it's what kind of gives you a little pride, something to fight for your hometown. I'm proud to be a Red Devil, and I'm gonna take it to my grave.
Hey, Mike. My question to you is, what are some big things on your agenda that we as citizens should keep an eye out for?
Well, I have a list of things on the back of my wall. If you ever see a picture of me sitting at my desk at City Hall, I've got a number of things kind of over my shoulder, but one is a list of things that I presented in May of 2012 when I came in. And I think it was a list of 10 or 11 things that I wanted to accomplish. And everything on that list but one is complete, and the one that's not complete is about halfway. But about a year ago, I'm in my office and I'm in a meeting with talking Dale Loram and Bill Sagasser. They're on the sewer board, and we were talking about really a number of things, just what their interests were. Dale's had a storied career. He was a U of L football player. He was Jeff High grad, NFL referee, but just sitting around talking with them. And, I wanted to know Dale's opinion and Bill's opinion about, when do you retire? They're older than I am. I think Bill's in his 70s and Dale's around 80, and they're still pretty active. And my question to them was, when do you retire? And, they're like, gosh, Mike, as long as you love doing your job, don't even think about it. And I said, well, I got this list up here, and, I got everything on here done but one thing. And Bill says, well, do you have other things you want to do too? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he goes, well, I'd advise you to put another list up there. So I sat down later that day and created another list of about 15 things. And that's the list I go by. What do I want to do? What do I want to see done? And a number of those items on that second list we've already completed, but they were huge hurdles for the city of Jeff. But for this year, we're in the middle. I think I brought it up at the last month's meeting. The biggest project we've got going now is the downtown, the EPA mandate, all of that. That will be an enormous release when we get that done. What day did I say it was going to be complete? I'm glad to see you're listening. October 10th, we get that done. Believe me, you do not want federal agencies looking over your shoulder because they have the ability to fine you if you don't do them. And that's what the threat to the city of Jeff and the people of Jeff were. If you don't get this done, we're going to start fining you. So getting that done is enormous to us. Trying in the midst right now of the other sewer plant, which is up in River Ridge, which services all of the areas up around Crystal Springs and Whispering Oaks, but River Ridge itself, we need more capacity. Our sewer capacity up there is right now currently 3 million gallons of water a day to be treated. We have less than 1 million gallons left. I've reached out to my city council. I've reached out for different grants, trying to get funding to get another expansion of 3 million gallons. We had talked previously about it being a $36 million project. Now, in all honesty, with today's prices, it's more like a $40 million project. I had a meeting last week with a big guy in the state. His name is Jim McGough, and all of these funds that you hear, Ready Grant, Swift Grant, all these different types of funding sources that come to communities, it's an enormous tool. We need that in order to continue to grow. So I made a request. I want $25 million. And I made a demand on River Ridge. He goes, his first question was, okay, what's the city of Jeff giving? What's River Ridge giving? And I was glad because the director of River Ridge was there. And a couple of weeks ago, I had said, I want River Ridge to commit money. And I think I caught him a little bit off guard. But Jeffersonville is going to continue to grow as long as we take care of the infrastructure needs that we have in front of us. Just like the EPA mandate that we're meeting downtown, this is another huge hurdle for us. And so my request to River Ridge is, okay, you all put $9 million in, we get this $25 million, and we'll put the difference in. I'm anxious to hear what Jim McGough comes back and says. I'm hoping I hear that within a month of that answer. But I still got to get River Ridge on board. Right now they haven't committed to it, but I hope they were paying attention when the state asked, what's River Ridge giving? Because thus far, that first 3 million gallons that we have up there right now, everybody in Jeff paid for that. River Ridge didn't pay for that, but yet River Ridge is using quite a bit of that. So now that we got to expand again, I don't think it's fair to ask the people who live in Jeff to pay for that. I want River Ridge to pay for that. So that's a big project. I hope I have an answer within a month. If we get that 25 million, it's a huge ask, but I think the state recognizes how important Jeffersonville is. And then Charlestown Pike, which is the main road that connects all of the subdivisions, whether you're in Raintree Ridge, Windy Pines, Whispering Oaks 1, Whispering Oaks 2, Skyline Acres, all those new subdivisions, Redtail Ridge, Williams Crossing, they all access the interstate up around 65 and 265 from Charlestown Pike. So that's a big project we're in right now. We got the cost estimates on that one back. It's a project on that. We had a public meeting and I asked everybody, what do you want to see? And in order to basically get it to where everybody was getting most of the requests they want, it's now a $19 million project. So a lot of big projects out there. Not ready to retire. So I plan on sticking around a little bit longer and getting some of these things done.
Our final question is from our junior class president.
Hello, Mike. Yesterday was MLK Day, of course, and I know the city and the school system celebrates that day. The city of Jeffersonville and the community has been diverse for so long, and you've lived in this community for your whole life. How can you comment on how Jeff stays unified, even though communities around us struggle with that?
I don't think you make decisions based on color. I think you make decisions based on respect. You know, whether it's somebody you're looking to fill a job for, or it's a neighborhood that needs help. Different neighborhoods have different needs. Jeffersonville's promise was extremely beneficial to some of the areas of the city that maybe didn't have a mom and dad in the household, two-parent income. The downtown elementary school was a huge fight for kind of the same needs. I think you look at the neighborhoods and the people and you say, how can I help? And I think you offer the help without making a decision based on color. You know, things have changed in our world a great deal since Dr. Martin Luther King. But a lot of the words that he said, they're still very true. What he wanted was equality. And it took an enormous amount of courage and sacrifice for not only Dr. King, but for a number of people to get America to wake up. And we're still dealing with, you know, there's still some ignorant people out there. But I come into work every day. I don't want to make decisions that have anything to do with giving a preference for color, whether it's white or black or for any other. You know, you could even put women or other minorities into this. I believe my job is to serve the people of Jeffersonville, to treat them all the same, to treat them all fairly, and to give them all opportunities. And I think that's what Dr. Martin Luther King was trying to say at a time when things weren't fair and people of different colors or races weren't given the same level playing field. You know, let's give everybody an opportunity to succeed. Some are going to succeed, some are going to fail. But it shouldn't have anything to do with the color of your skin.
Thank you for watching our second edition of More with Mike. For Mayor Mike Moore and the entire WJHI student staff, we say thank you, and we'll see you next time on More with Mike. This has been a WJHI production.